I said, did you even graduate high school? Marcus Whitmore's voice sliced through the marble and glass great room like a blade through silk. His $18,000 Brioni suit did nothing to hide the ugliness underneath, and his $2.3 million custom wheelchair, titanium frame, leather seating, more computing power than most cars, couldn't mask the cruelty twisting his face. Amara Johnson stood 3 feet away, her worn navy cleaning smock a stark contrast to the $47 million penthouse around her. She'd been reaching for a crystal tumbler on the side table when he'd barked the question. Now she straightened slowly, her dark hands steady despite the venom in the air. "Yes, sir, I graduated high school," she said quietly, her South Carolina accent wrapping around each word like honey over glass. "Where?" Marcus wheeled closer, the motor humming against the thick silence. "Let me guess. Some inner-city public school where they just push you through? Where graduating means you showed up half the time?" 3 other people occupied the room, frozen like statues. Dr. Patricia Chen, Marcus's neurologist, clutched her iPad so hard her knuckles went white. David Strickland, the estate attorney, suddenly found the $80,000 Basquiat on the wall absolutely fascinating. Elena Ruiz, the housekeeper who'd worked there for 15 years, stared at her feet and wished she could disappear into the Italian marble beneath them. "Beaufort High School, sir," Amara replied evenly. "Class of 1999. Marcus laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that belonged in a boardroom executing layoffs, not a home. "Beaufort, of course. Let me tell you something about people like you." He gestured broadly with one hand, his $45,000 Patek Philippe catching the afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. "You clean toilets because that's all you're qualified to do. That's not racism, sweetheart. That's reality." "Marcus," Dr. Chen began, her voice tight with discomfort. "No, Patricia, let me finish." He never took his eyes off Amara. "See, I built a $4 billion company from scratch. Started in a dorm room with nothing but brains and ambition. Know what I didn't do? I didn't blame the system. I didn't play the victim. I didn't expect handouts." Amara's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but she said nothing. "And now," Marcus continued, warming to his subject, "now I'm supposed to listen to people like you tell me about healing and spirituality and holistic medicine." He made air quotes with his fingers, mockery dripping from every syllable. "Elena tells me you've been talking about chakras and energy work and prayer, that you think you can sense what's wrong with people." "I never said," Amara started. "You people always say the same thing." His voice rose, sharp enough to cut. "God will provide. Just have faith. Let me pray for you." Well, I got news for you, sweetheart. Your God can't do everything. In fact, your God can't do much of anything, judging by where you've ended up in life. The room felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out. David Strickland shifted his weight, cleared his throat softly, but said nothing. Elena's eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. Amara stood perfectly still, not trembling, not crying, not even angry, at least not visibly. She simply looked at Marcus Whitmore with an expression that was almost compassionate, like she could see straight through the expensive suit and the cruel words to something broken underneath. "I'm here to clean, Mr. Whitmore," she said finally, her voice soft, but carrying a weight that made him pause. "Not to debate theology." No, I insist." Marcus wheeled even closer, so close she could smell his cologne. Tom Ford, $400 a bottle, failing to cover the scent of pain medication and something else. Desperation. "You church folk are always going on about faith and miracles and the power of prayer. So let's test it." He reached into his jacket pocket with theatrical flourish and pulled out a leather checkbook, the kind rich people carried as props more than necessity. He clicked open a $3,000 Mont Blanc pen and began writing, the scratch of nib on paper obscenely loud in the silence. "You think you're spiritual enough?" He tore out the check with a theatrical rip. "You think your God is so powerful? You think prayer and positive thinking and all that mumbo-jumbo actually works?" He held up the check. The number was clearly visible. $5,000. $5 million, Marcus announced, his voice dripping with contempt. "Right here. Right now. $5 million if you can make me walk again. That's what you people do, right? Lay hands on people? Speak in tongues? Call down miracles?" Dr. Chen gasped audibly. "Marcus, this is generous?" He laughed again. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of the help filling my mother's head with nonsense before she died. Just pray harder, Deaconess Whitmore. God has a plan." "You know what God's plan was, sweetheart. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer that killed her in 6 months despite all her praying." Amara's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, understanding, pain calling to pain. "So here's your chance," Marcus continued, waving the check like a flag. "Prove me wrong. Prove your God isn't just a fairy tale for people too stupid or too scared to face reality. Lay your magic hands on these useless legs and work your miracle." He leaned forward, voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Or admit that everything you believe is a lie and you're exactly what I said you are, a high school graduate cleaning rich people's toilets because you don't have the brains to do anything else." Marcus Whitmore had no idea that the woman he'd just mocked had been watching him for 3 weeks. He had no idea she'd already identified 7 critical errors in his treatment protocol. He had no idea his own doctors had been lying to him for 18 months. He had no idea that Amara Johnson had lost someone too, someone whose death had taught her that the deepest wounds were never physical. And most of all, he had no idea that his world was about to shatter in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. 3 days passed like years. Marcus couldn't stop thinking about her face. Not angry, not hurt, just sad. Sad for him. That was worse than any comeback she could have thrown at him. It was 2:47 a.m. when he found himself wheeling through his penthouse, unable to sleep despite the Ambien, despite the pain medication, despite the scotch. The building's security footage played on his laptop. 3 weeks of overnight recordings he'd bribed the super $5,000 to access. And there she was, every single night. But she wasn't just cleaning. Night 1. Amara paused by his medical files, carelessly left on the kitchen counter because who pays attention to the help, and photographed 3 pages with her phone. Night 4. She spent 20 minutes examining his wheelchair, running her hands along the frame like a mechanic diagnosing an engine. Night 7. She knelt beside his bed while he slept, carefully lifted his left leg, performed what looked like some kind of medical assessment, then wrote something in a small notebook. Night 12. She sat in his study reading his medical files. Not skimming, reading. Her lips moved slightly, forming words he couldn't hear. Then she shook her head slowly and wrote something on a post-it note. Night 18. She stuck that post-it note to his laptop screen. 2 words. "Call me." And below it, a phone number in careful handwriting. Marcus wheeled to his desk. The post-it was still there, the adhesive weakening but holding. His hand trembled as he reached for his phone. He'd built a tech empire worth $4.3 billion. He'd negotiated with heads of state. He'd fired 3,000 employees in a single board meeting without blinking. But dialing this number felt like stepping off a cliff blindfolded. He dialed. She answered on the first ring. "Mr. Whitmore?" Not a question. A statement. like she'd been waiting. How did you— Because you're not stupid, Amara said. He heard rustling, like she was sitting up in bed. Arrogant, yes. Cruel, definitely. But not stupid. You've been watching the security footage. You saw me with your medical files, and you want to know what I know. His throat was dry. Who are you? Someone who's cleaned a lot of doctors' offices, someone who's read a lot of medical journals, someone who knows your gastrocnemius muscles are atrophied but not dead, someone who's watched you move your left foot in your sleep. She paused. Someone who knows you've been lied to. What are you talking about? Your injury, Marcus. May I call you Marcus? No. Your injury, Mr. Whitmore, is an incomplete spinal cord injury. Grade C, possibly grade B on the Asia impairment scale. That means you have motor function below the injury level. That means you have sensation. That means you have significant potential for recovery. The room tilted. My doctors said— Your doctors lied. Her voice was gentle but firm, like a teacher correcting a mistake. Dr. Patricia Chen, Dr. Marcus Williams, Dr. Robert Kushner, they've been managing your symptoms, not treating your injury. And I can prove it. Why would they? Because a permanent patient is profitable. A recovered patient is not. She let that sink in. Your prescriptions generate approximately $2.3 million annually for Vestron Pharmaceuticals. Dr. Chen owns 47,000 shares in Vestron. Do the math. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the chest. That's insane. That's conspiracy theory nonsense. Then explain why your MRI from 6 months ago shows 40% nerve pathway viability, but Dr. Chen told you 0%. Explain why your EMG tests show measurable motor unit activity, but you were told you'd never walk. Explain why your treatment protocol has been pharmacological management instead of aggressive physical rehabilitation. How do you know all this? Google me, Amara said simply. Dr. Amara Okonkwo Johnson. OKONKWO-Johnson. His fingers were already moving across the keyboard. The results loaded. His breath stopped. Dr. Amara Okonkwo Johnson, winner of the 2018 International Holistic Medicine Award, featured in The Lancet for groundbreaking work on integrative pain management and spinal cord injury recovery. Keynote speaker at the 2017 World Health Summit. 14 peer-reviewed publications. Former director of rehabilitation medicine at Columbia Presbyterian. TED Talk. 4.2 million views. Former. The article stopped 3 years ago. After that, nothing. She'd vanished. You were— His voice came out strangled. You were the director of rehabilitation medicine at Columbia Presbyterian? I was. And now you're cleaning my floors? Yes. Why? A long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, rougher, like old fabric worn thin. Because my son died, Marcus. And when he died, I stopped believing in healing. Stopped believing in medicine. Stopped believing in anything except putting one foot in front of the other and trying not to drown. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be honest. He heard her take a breath. I've been watching you for 3 weeks. I've seen you try to move your toes at 3 a.m. when you think nobody's looking. I've seen you cry when you think you're alone. I've seen you wheel yourself to the window and stare at the park like you're looking at a country you used to live in but can't remember how to get back to. His eyes burned. He pressed his palm against them hard enough to see stars. And I've seen something else, Amara continued. I've seen your board of directors preparing to remove you. Dr. Chen filed medical incompetency paperwork 3 weeks ago. They vote next Thursday. You have 8 days to prove you're still viable, or Richard Paulson takes everything. Your seat, your shares, your company. How do you know? I clean the boardroom, Marcus. I'm invisible, which means I see everything. She paused. So here's what I'm offering. Not $5 million. Not your pity or your contempt. Something harder. 6 months of your life. 6 months of what? Showing up. Being honest. Doing the work. Feeling the pain you've been running from since long before that horse threw you. Her voice was steel wrapped in velvet. You give me 6 months of truth, and I'll give you a chance at walking again. A real chance. Not prayer and pixie dust. Evidence-based rehabilitation combined with holistic healing. The kind of work I did at Columbia before I forgot why it mattered. And if I say no? Then Richard Paulson takes your company in 8 days, and you spend the rest of your life wondering if I was right. She waited. Your choice. Marcus stared at the ceiling of his $47 million penthouse, at the imported Italian plaster and the hidden LED lights and all the expensive nothing that surrounded him. He thought about his mother's face when the cancer took her. He thought about the divorce papers Veronica had served him 2 years ago. He thought about the moment Destiny's hooves left the ground and time stretched like taffy, and he knew he was about to lose everything. What do I have to do? Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Don't eat breakfast. Wear loose clothing. And Marcus, bring your mother's Bible, the one you keep in your nightstand under the sleeping pills you pretend you don't take. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the dark, his mother's Bible 3 feet away in a drawer he hadn't opened in 2 years, and realized he was either about to be saved or completely destroyed. Possibly both. 6 a.m. came like judgment. Marcus hadn't slept. He sat in his gym, 15,000 square feet of equipment that mocked him daily with its uselessness, wearing Columbia sweatpants and a t-shirt that hung loose on his frame. The Bible sat beside him on a weight bench, its leather cover worn soft by his mother's hands, by decades of Sunday services and Wednesday night prayer meetings and early morning devotionals when she'd pray for her brilliant, ambitious, angry son. The elevator chimed. Amara stepped out. No cleaning uniform, black leggings, gray loose-fit shirt. She carried a canvas bag that smelled herbal, medicinal, like walking into a health food store but less aggressive. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup, no jewelry except a simple gold cross at her throat. She looked at him for a long moment, and he braced for something. Anger? Smugness? Vindication? Instead, she just nodded. You showed up. That's the first miracle. Don't call it that. Fair. She set the bag down, pulled out a yoga mat, unrolled it on the floor with practiced efficiency. Here's how this works. I'm going to touch your legs. You're going to feel things. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. You're going to want me to stop. I won't. You're going to want to quit. I won't let you. And when you think you can't take one more second, that's when the real work begins. Sounds like torture. It is. She knelt beside his wheelchair. But here's the thing about torture, Marcus. It either breaks you or remakes you, and you've been breaking for long enough. You don't know anything about me. I know everything about you. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes were fierce. I know that cross tattoo on your left shoulder blade used to be bigger. I know you had it partially removed 2 years ago. Laser removal, judging by the scar tissue pattern. I know your mother was Deaconess Whitmore at Abyssinian Baptist Church. I know she died 1 week before your IPO. I know you blamed God and haven't stepped inside a church since. His face went hot. How? Because I've lived that story too. Different details, same wound. She placed her hands on his right knee. Her palms were warm. My son Caleb died 3 years ago. Leukemia. He was 8 years old. We had insurance, but it didn't cover the experimental treatment. We tried everything. GoFundMe, charity care, payment plans. Nothing was enough. And I was the director of rehabilitation medicine at one of the best hospitals in the country, and I couldn't save my own son. Marcus's throat closed. I'm sorry. I blamed God, too. Screamed at him, cursed him, walked away from everything I believed, quit my job, changed my name, went back to just using my married name, Johnson, instead of Okonkwo Johnson. Let all my medical licenses lapse. Started cleaning floors because at least with dirt, you know what you're dealing with. Her hands moved to his calf. But then I started watching you, and I realized something. What? That my son didn't die so I could disappear. He died so I could understand what real healing looks like. She pressed her thumb into a specific point just below his knee. Any sensation? No. She moved higher. Here? No. Higher. Here? A ghost of a feeling. Maybe. I'm not sure. Her eyes lit up like someone had switched on lights in a dark room. Not sure is perfect. Not sure means the pathways are there. They're just dormant, like a house where nobody's turned on the lights in 18 months. Can you turn them on? We can try. But you need to understand something first. She sat back on her heels. I'm not going to pray away your injury. I'm not going to pretend this is just about positive thinking or good vibes. What I'm going to do is combine evidence-based neuromuscular rehabilitation with visualization, breath work, myofascial release, meditation, and yes, prayer. Because I've learned that the body and the soul don't heal separately. They heal together, or they don't heal at all. I don't believe in souls. You don't have to. Think of it as your nervous system and your limbic system, your muscles and your trauma, your spine and your story. Call it whatever helps you show up. She pulled a small amber bottle from her bag. This is frankincense oil, therapeutic grade, costs $180 an ounce. It's going to smell like church. Try not to have a panic attack. Despite everything, he almost laughed. You're serious. Dead serious. She opened the bottle. The scent hit him immediately, sharp, resinous, ancient. It smelled exactly like Abyssinian Baptist on Sunday mornings, like his mother's hands when she'd anoint his forehead before school, like every prayer and promise and plea he'd spent 2 years trying to forget. His chest tightened. I can't. Yes, you can. Amara's voice was firm but not unkind. The smell can't hurt you. The memories can't hurt you. Running from them is what's been killing you. She poured oil into her palms, rubbed them together. Now, tell me about the horse. Why? Because you've been stuck in that moment for 18 months. Until you face it, you'll never leave it. Marcus closed his eyes, took a breath, let it out. Her name was Destiny. Ironic. I know. She was a wedding gift from Veronica. The day we finalized the divorce, I drove to our estate in Connecticut. I was so angry. At her, at the board, at myself. I took Destiny out and just rode. Fast, reckless, pushed her harder than I should have. She cleared a stone fence, landed wrong, threw me. He swallowed. I hit a rock. Heard my spine crack like dry wood snapping. And you know what I thought? What? Good. Finally. Something broke on the outside to match the inside. Amara's hands stilled on his leg. Say that again. I thought at least now everyone would see. That I was already broken, that I'd been broken since my mother died, and I realized God wasn't real and nothing mattered, and success was just another word for running fast enough that the emptiness couldn't catch you. His voice cracked. And then the emptiness caught me anyway. Marcus? She squeezed his knee gently. Look at me. He opened his eyes, Hers were wet. "You're not broken," she said. "You're wounded. There's a difference. Broken things get thrown away. Wounded things heal." She resumed working, her fingers pressing into muscle that hadn't been touched with intention in months. "Your mother knew that. That's why she marked Psalm 147:3 in this Bible." She nodded toward the bench. His hands shook as he picked it up. The pages fell open to the spot she'd mentioned, the binding worn from repeated visits. Yellow highlighter glowed under the overhead lights. "He heals the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds." And in the margin, in his mother's careful handwriting, "For my Marcus, when he finally stops running." He shattered, not crying, exploding. 18 months of rage and grief and terror disguised as success all came pouring out in sobs that shook his entire body. And Amara didn't stop working. Her hands moved up his calf, pressing into the gastrocnemius, the soleus, the tibialis anterior, finding pain he'd been hiding and dragging it into the light. "Let it out," she murmured. "You can't heal what you won't feel." He cried until his throat was raw, until his face was soaked, until he felt scraped clean from the inside out. Finally, the storm passed. He sat there gasping, exhausted, emptied. "Now," Amara said softly, "let's see if anything woke up." She pressed her thumb into a spot just above his knee. "Feel that?" A flicker. Small. Unmistakable. "Yes." "Say it again." "Yes. I feel it. I actually feel it." She smiled, and it was like watching sunrise. "That's the second miracle. You showed up. Your body showed up. Now we build from here." The first month was war. Every morning, 6 a.m. sharp, Amara arrived. Sometimes they worked in silence, her hands moving across his legs with surgical precision, finding knots of scar tissue and patiently coaxing them loose. Sometimes they talked, about his mother, about her son, about faith and doubt, and the terrible space between them. She taught him breathwork. 4 counts in, 7 counts hold, 8 counts out. It's not mystical, it's neuroscience. It activates your parasympathetic nervous system, tells your body it's safe to heal. She taught him visualization. Close your eyes, see the nerve pathways lighting up, see the signals traveling from your brain down your spine, through your hips, into your thighs. Don't force it, invite it. Week 2, his left big toe moved, just a twitch, barely visible. But Marcus saw it. Amara saw it. And the word impossible developed its first crack. Week 3, Dr. Patricia Chen arrived for his regular checkup and found him on the floor, drenched in sweat, working through assisted leg lifts with Amara guiding his movements. "What the hell is going on here?" Chen's voice was sharp as broken glass. Marcus didn't stop. "Revising my treatment protocol." "Marcus, you can't just... Who authorized this?" "I did." Amara stood, wiping her hands on a towel. "Dr. Chen, right?" "I've read your papers on pharmacological management of chronic pain. Impressive work. Though I couldn't help noticing you're a major shareholder in Vestron Pharmaceuticals." Chen's face went pale. "That's public record and completely irrelevant." "Is it?" Amara's voice remained gentle, but her eyes were steel. "Because Mr. Whitmore's prescriptions generate approximately $2.3 million in annual revenue for Vestron. That's a lot of money to lose if he recovers." "How dare you suggest—" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts." Amara pulled a folder from her bag. "His MRI from 6 months ago shows 40% nerve pathway viability. Yet you told him he had 0 chance of recovery. His EMG tests show measurable motor unit activity in both legs. Yet you classified his injury as complete. His ASIA score is a C, possibly a B. Yet you reported it as an A. She held out the folder. Would you like to explain these discrepancies? The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Marcus grabbed the folder, flipped it open. Medical terminology he didn't fully understand, but the conclusions were crystal clear. Notes in different doctors' handwriting. Probability assessments that contradicted everything he'd been told. You... His voice came out strangled. You told me I'd never walk. Marcus, You looked me in the eye and said I had no chance. That I should focus on acceptance and adaptation and learning to live with my new reality. His hands shook so violently the papers rattled. You lied to me. I provided a realistic assessment based on what's most profitable for your stock portfolio, his voice cracked. How much? How much did you make off keeping me in this chair? Chen's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face went gray. I need to take this. You need to get the hell out of my house. Marcus's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it more terrifying. You have 1 hour to clear out any personal items from my medical files. After that, you're fired. And Dr. Chen? I'm filing a formal complaint with the New York State Medical Board, with evidence. She fled. The door slammed. Silence filled the space she'd vacated. How long have you known? Marcus asked quietly. 3 weeks. Since the first night I saw your files. Amara knelt beside him again. I wanted to tell you immediately, but you needed to want recovery for yourself first, not because I convinced you it was possible. Hope is worthless if it's not yours. What happens now? Now we accelerate. Because you were right about one thing, your board meeting is in 5 days, and if we're going to save your company, we need to get you standing. Dr. Sarah Brennan arrived from Johns Hopkins that afternoon. She was small, maybe 5'2", with silver hair and rimless glasses and a reputation for scientific rigor that bordered on merciless. She'd literally written the textbook on spinal cord injury rehabilitation. When she walked into Marcus's penthouse, she didn't waste time with pleasantries. Dr. Okonkwo Johnson, Marcus. Let's see what we're working with. 2 hours of examination followed. Manual muscle tests, reflex assessments, range of motion measurements. She reviewed every MRI, every EMG, every piece of medical documentation with the focused intensity of a jeweler examining diamonds. Finally, she sat back. Dr. Chen should lose her license. Your injury is a textbook incomplete SCI with significant recovery potential. I'd estimate 60 to 70% motor function return is achievable with proper intervention. Can he stand? Amara asked. In 5 days? For 30 seconds? Brennan considered. It would require accelerating the protocol significantly. Twice daily sessions, significant pain, high risk of setback. But possible? Possible. Brennan turned to Marcus. But only if you're willing to experience more pain in the next 5 days than you've experienced in the last 18 months combined. Marcus thought about his mother, about Caleb's drawing, about Amara's hands and her tears and her stubborn refusal to let him disappear. Let's do it. The next 5 days blurred into a symphony of agony. 2 sessions daily, 3 hours each. Dr. Brennan flew in specialists. Dr. James Patel, orthopedics. Dr. Lisa Washington, neural rehabilitation. They worked in rotation, their hands never gentle but always purposeful. Muscle stimulation, nerve mobilization, balance training on parallel bars, core strengthening that made Marcus cry actual tears, mental rehearsal where he visualized walking until his brain ached. And through it all, Amara. Her voice steady as bedrock. Breathe, Marcus. That's your L4 vertebra screaming. Let it scream. Breathe through it. See the pathway. Brain to spine to hip to knee to ankle. Light it up. Your mother believed you could do impossible things. Prove her right. Day 3, 10 seconds of standing. Day 4, 20 seconds. Day 5, morning of the board meeting. 45 seconds while gripping a walker, his legs shaking so violently he thought his bones would shatter. Sweat pouring down his face like rain, every muscle screaming murder. That's enough. Brennan's voice was firm. Any more risks permanent damage. Marcus, you get one shot in that boardroom. 30 seconds maximum. Make them count. The boardroom of Whitmore Technologies occupied the 47th floor of a midtown skyscraper. Zebrawood table worth $300,000. Leather chairs at $15,000 each. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking Manhattan like a kingdom. 14 board members sat in tense silence as Richard Paulson, the CFO, stood at the head of the table, his $8,000 suit perfectly pressed, his smile perfectly poisonous. Given Mr. Whitmore's continued medical incapacity and documented inability to execute his duties as CEO, I move that we... The doors opened. Marcus wheeled in. Standard hospital wheelchair this time, not his fancy custom one. Dr. Brennan pushed him. Behind her, Amara, Dr. Patel, Dr. Washington. Marcus. Paulson's sympathy was so fake it was almost impressive. You're in the middle of a coup based on falsified medical documentation. Marcus's voice carried clearly across the room. Dr. Brennan? Brennan stepped forward, handed folders to each board member with the efficiency of a dealer in Vegas. Inside, you'll find evidence that Mr. Whitmore's medical team deliberately misdiagnosed his injury and provided substandard care. You'll also find documentation that Dr. Patricia Chen received $4.7 million in stock options and consulting fees from Vestron Pharmaceuticals, compensation contingent on maintaining Mr. Whitmore's disability status and continued prescription drug dependency. The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Accusations flew. Someone shouted about lawsuits. Someone else about SEC violations. Even if that's true, Paulson's voice cut through the chaos, Marcus is still unable to lead this company from a wheelchair. Good thing I'm not staying in it. Marcus's voice was quiet. The room went silent. He gripped the armrests. Amara moved beside him, not helping, just present. He thought about his mother's hands on his shoulders when he was 8, teaching him to ride a bike without training wheels. You can do impossible things, baby. You just have to want them more than you fear them. Marcus stood. His legs shook, his arms trembled, lightning shot up his spine, but he stood, released the wheelchair, gripped the walker with white-knuckled hands. One step forward. Another. 14 board members stared like they were witnessing resurrection. Richard Paulson's mouth hung open. Dr. Sharon Martinez, the lead director who'd co-signed his removal, whispered, "Oh my God." Marcus took a 4th step, a 5th. He reached the head of the table where Paulson stood frozen and looked him dead in the eye. "Motion denied." His voice was steel. "Meeting adjourned. Richard, you're fired. Dr. Martinez, you're fired. Anyone who voted to remove me has 30 days to resign with severance or be terminated with cause and face litigation." He paused. "Oh, and one more announcement." He turned slightly, caught Amara's eye. Dr. Bear, Amara Okonkwo-Johnson is now Chief Medical Officer of Whitmore Technologies. Salary, $850,000 annually. Her mandate, build a rehabilitation division focused on holistic recovery for spinal cord injury patients. Initial budget, $500 million over 5 years. Anyone have objections? Silence. Good. Someone help me back to my chair before I collapse. He did collapse, into the wheelchair with as much dignity as possible. Dr. Brennan checked his vitals immediately. You just set your recovery back 3 weeks with that stunt. Worth every second. Marcus looked at Amara. Her eyes were wet. Thank you, she smiled. You did the impossible thing, just like your mother knew you would. 6 months later, everything changed. The medical board stripped licenses from Chen, Williams, and Kushner. Vestron Pharmaceuticals paid $340 million in settlements. The story went viral. Billionaire exposes medical conspiracy, hires janitor who saved his life. But the real revolution happened quietly. Marcus funded the Caleb Johnson Center for Integrative Rehabilitation, a gleaming facility in Upper Manhattan with floor-to-ceiling windows and treatment rooms that smelled like hope instead of antiseptic. The bronze plaque in the lobby read, "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." Psalm 147:3. Opening day, Amara stood before that plaque crying while Marcus stood beside her, without a walker, without a cane, just standing. "I've been thinking about your offer," he said quietly, "the one about giving you half my fortune." She turned. "Marcus, I never wanted—" "I know, but I'm offering anyway." $2 billion. He pulled out a folded document. Seed funding for an international network of holistic rehabilitation centers. Free treatment regardless of ability to pay. Research grants for integrative medicine. Training programs for marginalized healthcare workers who've been overlooked by the system. Her hands trembled as she took the paper. "This is what Caleb would have wanted. What my mother would have wanted. What I want." He smiled. "You gave me my life back. Let me help you give life back to thousands more." 3 years later, the revolution was undeniable. 15 Caleb Johnson centers operated across the United States, with 8 more internationally. They'd treated 12,400 patients, published 47 peer-reviewed studies, changed treatment protocols at major hospitals nationwide. But something else happened. Something bigger. In hospital corridors across the country, doctors started really seeing the people who cleaned their offices, started asking questions, started discovering that Maria Gonzalez in housekeeping was a trained physical therapist from Colombia, that David Thompson, the night security guard, held 3 engineering degrees from Lagos, that Sarah Kim, who cleaned the cafeteria, was a former pediatric surgeon whose credentials weren't recognized in America. Whitmore Technologies launched the Hidden Talent Initiative, partnered with medical boards to fast-track credential recognition for immigrant healthcare workers. Within 3 years, 4,700 overlooked professionals returned to their fields. Marcus walked now. Some days better than others, some days requiring a cane. But he walked, and every morning at 6 a.m., he spent an hour in meditation and prayer. Not because he'd become religious, because he'd become reverent. 3 years and 2 months after Amara first cleaned Marcus's penthouse, she stood in the lobby of the Caleb Johnson Center's flagship location. A ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new wing, expanded capacity, state-of-the-art equipment. Everything. She noticed a young man sitting in the corner during his break, maybe 19. Janitorial uniform, medical textbook open on his lap, lips moving as he read. She approached. "What are you studying?" He startled. "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, I was just—" "Don't apologize. What's the book?" "Advanced Cardiac Physiology. I used to study medicine. In Syria. Before—" He trailed off, eyes dropping. "What's your name?" "Tariq." Marcus appeared beside her, walking steady. "Dr. Johnson, everything okay?" "More than okay." She smiled at Tariq. "This young man has medical training from Syria." Marcus sat down beside Tariq, extended his hand. "Marcus Whitmore, I own this place. Tell me about your training." Tariq's eyes went wide. "Sir, you're not just anything." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. 3 years ago, a woman stood in my penthouse while I mocked her faith, her education, her worth. I offered her $5 million as a joke. She walked away with her dignity intact and changed my entire life. He gestured around the center. All of this exists because she saw what I couldn't see, because she refused to be invisible. He looked back at Tariq. "So I'm going to ask again, and I want you to answer like you matter. Because you do. Tell me about your medical training." Tariq's eyes filled with tears. I was in my 4th year at Damascus University. I was going to be a cardiologist. Then the war came and I had to leave. My credentials don't transfer here, so I clean. It's all I can get. Not anymore. Amara pulled out her phone. I'm calling Dr. Brennan at Johns Hopkins. We're going to review your transcripts, verify your training, and get you into our credential recognition program. How's that sound? Tariq stared at her like she'd just spoken in tongues. You would do that? We've done it for 4,700 others. What's one more? She smiled. Talent is everywhere, Tariq. Opportunity is what's rare. Consider yourself opportunitied. Marcus laughed at her made-up word. Is that a medical term? It is now. Right now, in hospitals and offices across the world, there are janitors with PhDs, security guards with engineering degrees, food service workers who speak 6 languages, home health aides who were surgeons. They clean floors, check badges, serve meals, change bed pads, and most people don't see them. According to a 2023 MIT study, 62% of immigrant service workers in America hold college degrees from their home countries. 40% hold advanced degrees. That's 8.4 million people with extraordinary skills working jobs that don't require them. The economic impact? $240 billion in untapped human potential annually. But the real loss isn't economic, it's human. Every overlooked person is a cure not discovered, a bridge not built, a child not taught, a life not saved. A miracle dismissed because we couldn't see past a uniform and an accent and our own assumptions about who deserves to be seen. Tomorrow you'll pass someone in a uniform, someone whose name tag you won't read, someone whose story you won't ask about, someone whose brilliance you'll never notice because you're too busy, too distracted, too convinced that success looks a certain way and genius speaks with a certain accent. And you'll make a choice. You'll either see them, really, truly see them, or you'll be like Marcus was, blind to the miracle standing right in front of you. When have you discovered hidden brilliance in someone others overlooked? Comment below. Share this story if you believe talent exists everywhere. Subscribe to this channel for stories that prove potential has no prerequisites.